Hello and welcome back to the Tavern. It is your host, GM Misfit, over here, and tonight we've got some interesting friends that I wanted to have a wonderful time talking with. These two gentlemen have started up a fantastic brand new podcast called 20 Sides Dice? 20,
No,
20
just 20
yeah,
sides.
20 Sides.
Yeah.
Got it. And we had a good conversation, and I started listening to their stuff, and they chunk their stuff down in very easy parts for me to watch now or listen to on my commute here to and from work. But I wanted to bring them on here because they're at that cusp. They're at the beginning of that project. You know, we started our project almost 2 years ago now, and sometimes we forget what it feels like to be at that point. So before I go any farther, I'd like to introduce Matt and Philip. So if you want to tell them a little bit about you guys and where they can find you.
So I am Matt. I am our dungeon master. You can find me at 20 Sides Matt and really 20 Sides Pod on Instagram, Twitter, all the I say all the socials. It's pretty much just those two socials that we focus on, and mainly Instagram, which Philip runs for the most part. And yeah, you can find us on any podcast platform that you have. And like Misfit said, if you want a good small chunk of a podcast where it's not a big 2 hour long episode every week that you've got to somehow fit into your busy schedule, which pretty much no one can at this point with how much content people are consuming. Our episodes are about 35, 40-ish minutes each, just depending on where the story takes us. And we keep the story rolling. There's not a lot of banter at the beginning. Actually, there's no banter at the beginning. We just play Dungeons and Dragons. And so it's tightly edited in a good way, and the story keeps rolling, and it's pretty action packed. So you get a lot of story in that 30, 45 minutes.
Awesome. And
Yeah.
Philip, you're the I'm not gonna lie, one of my favorite characters on the show so far.
Awesome.
You were
Thank
Seven, the Warforged,
Yes.
I believe cleric.
Warforged cleric, yes.
And I have a affinity to the idea that you are presenting yourself in a way that feels very, the word is killing me at the moment. You're not
Childish.
represented the same. Yeah, you feel like you're out of the place in a lot of scenarios throughout the first parts of the story, and I think that's very interesting because as a Warforged, you probably would feel pretty out of place. So definitely playing that well. So let them know a little bit about Seven and you and
yeah. So my name's Philip. I play Seven. He is a Warforged cleric that really has no idea what he's doing, but wants to prove that he does. And so he is willing to do whatever it takes to be a part of the crew and kind of find his place. And that's the big thing. I think with Warforged, I took that as kind of, like you're saying, out of place. He doesn't really fit into any of the normal sense of things. And so he's trying really hard to do that. But in this, I don't know, kind of like, he doesn't have the social, the social aspects that he should, and he doesn't really know when to pull back and when not to pull back and all that kind of good stuff. So he's just trying to kind of make his way. I benefit greatly from what Matt has built with the story of Acclura, with it being homebrewed to us, and everything he's done there makes it very easy to be Seven and to just jump in and do that. I do run most of our socials. We do have TikTok. We do have, we have a Twitch.
We have them all.
We have
very
them
difficult.
all. You know what it's like. It's a full-time job to run social media. And so Instagram really is kind of where we put our foot, trying to put our best foot forward there and just kind of grab a hold of things and take off running before we got started. We actually have, and you talked about, you've been in this for a couple of years now. Matt, how long have we been doing this? For year and a half that we've been doing. So a lot of our things have been behind the scenes, just kind of like prepping and getting everything ready and making sure that because life is crazy and everything that goes on, we wanted to make sure that we could be as consistent as possible once we did launch. And so there's been a lot of that background stuff happening, so where we could go ahead and have things in place and be ready to launch and stay on top of it. So
yeah, we did a lot of like market research, if you will. I mean, it wasn't this grand market research, but like we put polls out on Reddit and Twitter, and we asked people in other circles and everything from, hey, what do you want to see more in a podcast? Do you want to see more role play? Do you want to see more combat? Do you want to see more social interaction? What do you want to see more? And then how long do you want your podcast to be? If you have to fit another D&D podcast in, how long do you want it to be? Do you want banner at the beginning with just us talking randomly, or do you not? Like, and so we looked at that a ton before we even sat down at the table to record for our first episode. And then we recorded our first episode and went and we listened back and edited it and we went, nope. And then we re-recorded our first episode. What was funny is I had to completely change, my plan as a DM every time to keep it fresh for the players, because we want a fresh, still in the same vein of like where we were going with big bad evil guy and all that kind of stuff in the world, but like what's happening. And we recorded it one time and we went, not quite there. We recorded it again and we were like really close, but that's not what we want to put forward for our first, second, third, fourth episodes. And so we recorded it a third time and we were like, okay, we're there. We got it. And then we hit the ground running. And like Philip said, I think we banked about 26 episodes so far. And then we've got some cool not behind the scenes, but backstory episodes for a character that you haven't seen yet. We've got those banked as well. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that's a big thing, because that's definitely something that you want to see. I'm curious. I'm gonna have to talk maybe off stream on that part, so the market research and stuff like that, because I'd be curious about what we could do as the Misfits to improve our stuff on Twitch, which I do know is a different monster than podcasting, because I have to actually be in front of the camera. Where
right.
Personally, I would prefer not to be if I didn't have to be. But
same. I've got a face for radio.
I've gotten used to it. So. Not to mention Twitch. I love live casting. I think it's great. I think it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of extra work. And then the marketing side of it, like you said, we prepped for Plots in Darkenhaven, which was our project that just finished up last week, for almost a year as well. We were streaming and we were doing things, but the plan was to launch something big, something that had some power to it, and it finally kicked off, and that was exciting. And once we saw the 12-week episode, 12 weeks go past, we were like, okay, now what's the next big project to plan for while we do these little things in between?
Yeah.
So because you can't be always, at your top at every project if you're not putting that time and energy into it. And just like we talked about off stream, is that we all have lives. This isn't our full-time jobs. At least some of us. I don't know if some people out there it is, but for me, it's not. I have a full-time job, kids and a wife, and try to keep all of it together without falling apart.
Yeah.
So I'm curious now. So we had a conversation yesterday, I believe, or maybe it was this morning. My days start to wrap around pretty quickly. Some of the things that we had talked about, maybe talking about on the show, tips on planning and ways to manage the party once the game starts. So how much prep? So you said you did a ton of prep work on the back end side to prepare everything, to get everything ready. How much back work did you do for the actual adventure itself and with the players?
So I'm very much a believer in like have the end goal in mind.
Correct.
And then have the big points you want to hit along the way. But I think as a DM, if you try to plan like each session out way far in advance, you're done after one session. And so I'm a big believer in, plan a session, and then again, have your high points. Know that your characters need to go to the Underdark and fight a dragon at some point. And how you're going to get them there is a whole different story, but you've got to plan that individual session as a individual session.
Correct.
And then you can connect the dots later on when you're sitting there and you're drinking a cup of coffee and you've got all the time in the world, which none of us have. But
but
that's
the coffee moments do exist.
Yes, that's when you're connecting back your points to, okay, this NPC could have been this in 10 years ago. So, okay, I'm going to write that down now, where before I didn't have that. And so for me, it's, where are my players? I don't know how much you've listened to Sly Flourish at all. I don't know if you, so I'm a big believer in like his, he calls it the lazy DM.
Yeah.
But looking at
I wish he would stop calling it that, truthfully.
I know, because it's not really lazy.
You're not lazy.
It's smart
You're
DMing.
Prepared. It's smart DMing. It's prepared DMing. And it allows it allows the game to flow without having everything done in a sequential order.
Yes. It's not rigid.
It's not rigid.
Yeah. And I think that's the biggest for me when I plan. I try, and again, this comes from Sly Flourish.
Yeah.
I'm way bigger on situations than I am. This is X is going to happen, then Y is going to happen, then Z is going to happen. It's your situation one that I'm going to put my players in, and I want to see how they react to the situation, because the world's happening around them. And, maybe this isn't a spoiler, but in Philip's first campaign that he played with me, in the first game Philip ever ran in his entire life, I started him out in a tavern because that's what you do in Dungeons and Dragons, especially for your first time ever playing.
Oh yeah.
And I had Cobalt set the tavern on fire. And it was just, hey, what are you going to do now? Are you going to go out and fight? Are you going to try to get it? Are you going to leave all the patrons in there? Are you going to be the hero and save them? Or are you going to say, screw them and we're going out the back door and we're running? Like, what are you going to do as players?
Their motive, right?
Yeah.
Like, how are you going to play your character for the moment? Because I think that's really a fun thing to learn up front as well.
Yeah.
Because that's something that you get to tell people, like, hey, it puts them in a serious situation. And you're like, okay, what's everybody going to do right off the bat?
Yep.
Especially when you don't have a lot of things. You have what you start with, and that's it. And that's all you're working with. I think it's fun times.
Yeah, I think as a player too, it makes it so that you are in the situation. You're not being drug along. Like, and there's a difference between like knowing, hey, he's dragging me from X to Y to Z because I can feel that in how I'm being pushed towards these things. Yeah. And then and like Matt's saying, he knows these situational things that are going to happen. But for me, I'm in it, and now I have to make this decision because I don't know what's going to happen next, and I don't know where I'm going. And it makes it easier to feel a part of that rather than just being drugged along from point A to point B.
100% agree.
Like maybe somebody is seeking shelter from a rainstorm, and you've got to sit on a porch and talk to them, but you think, oh God, what is this person going to do to me the entire time? And they literally want nothing more than to just get out of the rain for 20, 30 minutes, and then they're on their way.
The funny thing is how you portray that can change the mentality completely.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, drop a
little bit of description of who this person is, and you're like, why is this person sitting on my porch wanting to talk to me?
Right.
What are they doing right now? What are they doing?
Yeah.
But it's really cool to see, and Philip and Bobby and I was about to say Ordella, Tyler and Jess do a great job of playing their characters more than playing themselves in the situations. And it's really cool to see, like, at this point, it's a spoiler, but it happens, I think, in episode 3, where Seven kidnaps the mayor, who was just kidnapped, or maybe not kidnapped, by the leader of the watch, the town's watch. And so that I was not expecting that at all, but I put him in a situation, and he heard it, and then we played it out, and Seven that's what Seven did I do not think that's what Yaros would have done, our barbarian,
Right.
and I do not think that's what. I don't even think Leo would have walked out of the window. I don't think she would have climbed out of the window. And
Right.
so, you know, them playing their characters makes it even more fun to see, you know, what happens in these situations.
No, I completely agree. And I apologize, everybody. Just a heads up. We do have some with the whole hurricane thing going on. It seems like we might be having some power issues with buffering and stuff. So I apologize for that, heads up. But if you want to check all this stuff out, you can check this out tomorrow or Friday on YouTube, because it'll be up there as well for VOD. So hopefully that'll clean up a little bit on that end, and you can watch it all the way through whenever you have a chance to. We've been talking about putting this actually on podcast form because people don't watch our show; they listen to our show half the time.
Yeah.
I don't know what I would even need to do to direct that go that direction. Like, I've been doing video for so long now. I'm like, it's just another project I got to figure out.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, so that's cool that you do that, because it's very similar to my game styles. You know, I like to put people into situations and see how they play.
Mhm.
But I don't like making those situations be, this is the only way you can get out of the situation. But I do want to at least put you in certain situations to see how you react. And then that can also drive new storylines too.
Yeah.
But yeah. So how long have you been playing, both of you?
So 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
4 or 5 years. Not.
Okay.
I was making fun of Matt one day because I was a teacher before, and
Right.
I've known, me and Matt have known each other since high school. So probably 20 years or so now.
Yeah.
But we were in the hallway one day. I found out he was making, like, I think he was doing terrain and things like that. And I was like, dude, you're a nerd. Like, that's, and he was like, okay, like, don't knock it until you try it, And yeah. And then we had that first, I was like, one of the football coaches was like, if Howard does it, I'll do it, And so we did, and hook, line, and sinker. The moment I left his house, I was like, hey, when are we going to play again? Like,
when we play,
are we going to play again? It was awesome. So that was probably, might have been 5. So yeah,
probably 6 years ago.
5 or 6 years ago. Yeah. So
that's when you picked up, first time ever playing D&D, and awesome. How about you, Matt?
So for me, it goes all the way back to the red box.
There you go. All right, I got somebody that I can relate to now.
Yeah. So now I say I played the red box. I was way younger at that age.
I had the red box. I didn't play the red box. I had the red box.
Yeah, my brother had the red box, and I would just all the time. I'm in there rolling dice, having no clue what I'm doing by myself. I'll never forget though. In the back of the book, there was like a choose your own adventure dungeon. I don't know if you remember this. And I would do that all the time.
Yeah, you could play by yourself.
Yeah. It was so much fun. And I mean, of course, I wasn't doing it correctly because I was young, but I'll remember it. I'll never forget it. I'll never forget the artwork in that book. And then Bobby, who plays Yaros, his dad played D&D forever in the Navy. And he asked us one day, do you want me to run a game for y'all? And we were like, oh, please. And I will never on my deathbed, after I forget who my kids' names are and forget my wife, I will never forget fighting a red dragon for the first time and like truly playing D&D for the first time. Right. I'll never forget how I was sitting on his couch, where I was sitting on his couch. He had this really big wooden coffee table that we played on. The miniatures, I still have to this day the Etten Mini that his dad used. The Etten was killing cows, and we had to investigate it and figure it out. And so, we played AD&D then. And then we played AD&D for a while, and then high school, we kind of stopped playing. We didn't play in college because we weren't all around. And then we actually picked back up 4th edition. So we skipped 3 and 3.5 and picked back up 4th edition, and then made our way into 5th edition, and we haven't stopped playing since.
Awesome. No, that's man, that brings me back, because that's kind of how I was, right? I didn't know what D&D was. I talked about it a couple weeks ago, and I was like, I had my grandfather in his house had it, and it was just laying around. He didn't know what it was. It's just
Yeah.
this box of, it's literally a makeshift dungeon, and then these random card pieces that you just place around. And
Oh,
I
I
was like,
love it.
I don't know what this is, but this monster looks cool, and this guy looks like he would kill the
Yes.
monster, and and I didn't know what the dice meant or anything like that. So
Yeah.
I played, and then I didn't actually find out what D&D was until I was in high school.
Hmm.
I lived in a small town in Ohio, and it wasn't really a known thing to play. Uh, and I had a friend of mine who decided that he goes, "Hey, we go up to Kent State every weekend and we play this game called Dungeons and Dragons." And I was like, "You've got my interest. How do we play?"
Yeah.
Like, he's like, "Well, you gotta, you can stay with my dad," because he was living in two different households at the time. He's like, "You stay with my dad and me for the weekend, and we can go play." And I was like, "All right, like, let me just make sure it's cleared with the family, and I'm good to go." Like,
Yeah.
for months on months, I would every other weekend drive up an hour, or my mother would take me up for an hour. We'd drop them off at a friend of mine's house, and we'd go play from. Now, mind you, I'm in high school, and the youngest person outside of this, the second oldest is 17, who is my friend, and then everybody after that was in their early to late 20s and beyond.
That's
So
awesome.
because we're playing at a college, and I can never forget my first game sitting down at a table in a college campus student center. There was literally a guy right next to me who's sitting there with, and this is how I knew I had turned into a different type of nerd. He's sitting there with chainmail links, just linking them together while he's playing, and I was
Oh, so
like,
far.
"You gotta be kidding me!" Like
Yeah,
this
yeah,
is
yeah.
what like, and he's building like a full blown shirt out of it. I was like,
And you're like, you nerd. Can I get a photo?
like,
Can I?
what is going on? Like, I stepped into a new world here.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
but it was crazy because the table was the size of like a queen size bed, and it was just covered in map. And I was
Yeah.
like, what do we do? Like, I don't know what's going on.
It's
That's
amazing how
awesome.
much like early D&D and the latest editions of D&D, and even one D&D as we come up on it,
Right.
is like it went from just put monsters in a dungeon. Who cares?
Yeah.
There's no rhyme or reason to any of it. You got orcs in one room, you got a dragon in another room, you have some ghosts in another room. Like there's no rhyme or reason to why this dungeon is the way it is. To now, everything is so much more story driven than
Yeah.
it was back then. Back then, it was just like hack and slash, get your gold, get your
Well, it was
magic
built.
weapons,
I mean, it was built
level up.
off of a wargaming
Yeah, yeah,
community, so that's all they knew. How
right.
many monsters can we throw at these four people and see until they die?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
but it was funny because I got a chance to talk to Luke at Gen Con this year,
Yeah.
and he told me, he's like, the reason why there's so many things in the general store area, like the general items, is because those were things that literally kept you alive in the first edition of D&D.
That
And
10-foot pole.
yeah, that 10-foot pole, ball bearings, because you
Yeah.
throw them out and you'd set off a trap, or
Right, right.
random things, mirrors, that kind of stuff, anything you can think of. All right, so we got first questions for the night. Let's see what we got here. Shadow Lantern says, what do y'all use to edit your podcast? Do you add in any post-recording effects?
Yeah, so we use Reaper. It's a digital audio workstation like Pro Tools or anything like that. It's you get a free, it's not free, but it's totally free because you can still evaluate it for your entire life. And then, for each, we have a microphone for each person, and I go through and automate. If somebody's not, it takes a while, but if somebody's not speaking, their automation is all the way down, so their volume is completely off on their microphone. If somebody is speaking, it's up. And then obviously like EQ, compression, de-essers, all that kind of stuff is on each channel. And then we have a master channel. For music, we use tabletopaudio.com, which you can use free if you don't have like 1 million subscribers or something crazy like that.
Right.
And their stuff is amazing. I absolutely love their backing tracks. They're not they're not distracting. I've heard some podcasts and you hear in the background, and I'm like, I can't stop thinking about that and not what's happening in the podcast. So like, it's very non-distracting, but it's very atmospheric. It's very,
Right.
I don't know. It's very dramatic, I guess is the word I'm looking for. And so we use that. I'm trying to think every once in a while, if I listen back and I hear a description I give of something, or I want to beef up a description of something, I may post edit in me describing something, or,
Right.
you know, it's usually bigger things. It's not you attack and hit with a sword. It's like you walk into this monastery, and in the live session, my explanation isn't good. And the players are like, wait, what? Say that again. Hey, wait, hold on. So there's a queue over here. And I'm like, so I may go back and re-edit that, but like none of the player stuff is re-edited. And so, yeah, I mean, that's kind of what we do. We have a Steinberg UR44 and then a Focusrite ISA1 preamps that we use. The Steinberg's the interface. It has 4 microphone inputs, and I'm probably getting a lot way more detailed than I'd need to get. But yeah, so that's what we do.
So Matt and I are from Nashville, Tennessee. So if you can imagine, we've been around music for a long time. Both of us went to college. We were recording industry majors, and we have a background, as far as audio recording and editing and things like that. So we tend to. Matt and I are the type that if we're going to do it, we're going to overdo it.
Which is it's a perfectly good way to do it. I'm telling you what. I don't know if this is appropriate to answer on this question. Eldritch Buds.
The Eldritch Buds?
Has a question.
What is that?
Without just starting to go over the those answers, if y'all want to answer that, you're welcome to. I don't know yet because I haven't watched the show enough to answer those questions.
I haven't. I'm not on the Twitch. Oh, goodness, I need to get on the Twitch.
So it was basically like F, Marry, Kill. You remember that game?
Yeah.
Oh.
And so Eldritch Buds is asking like Seven, Leo, and Yaros. Matt, what are you doing?
I mean, the fact that
this is fun.
The fact that I'm not attracted to men or robots. I really only have one choice here. It's not like I have a lot of choices on this.
Seven would have a lot of questions about how this would work, but
I feel like I would
more where he's trying to get out of it. It's like, okay, what would Seven think on all this?
What would Seven do?
If it's just the character, like if it's the players,
no, I think it's the characers. I don't think it's the players.
He's talking about characters. Yeah,
he's asking.
Clearly, I would marry
Leo, Seven,
Jess because that's who I married. But if it's the players, I'm definitely not marrying Leo because she would just nag you all the time.
Yeah, it's true.
It would be awful.
Mm-hmm.
I probably would.
I think you know who you would marry. I know.
I think I would marry Seven.
Absolutely. There's no other choice. Yeah.
But
turn the volume down, and I'm good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Turn him off. Click, click. It's like, all right, I'm playing video games tonight, boys. Let's go.
Yeah. Guess we're killing.
I'm marrying Seven. I guess I'm killing. Yaris.
Yeah.
And we know what the other one is. So
yeah, we know what the other one is. Yeah. No. Like I said, I didn't know how we should answer that one. So which I'm perfectly okay with people asking good questions like this. This is the first time I've had that kind of a question.
I love it. It's probably common.
I would suggest at that point that we need more characters to answer these questions.
Exactly.
I only got three characters here.
Yeah.
Only one's female. So
yeah, there you go.
But that's an interesting question there.
Yeah, thanks, Connor.
I'm hoping, Shadow, did we answer your question with the post-recording effects and podcasting? Hopefully some of that helped.
Yeah.
Like
that's a lot of things that we do. We do tend to go a little deeper in. I mean, a lot of Waves is a lot of plugins as far as like EQ, compression. I don't know if you still use Isotope at all, Matt, for any of your mastering or anything like that. But
no, I use oh God, what is it called? Big into Fab Filter right now. Huge
Yeah.
Fab Filter fan.
Especially for
Huge Fab
EQ.
Filter.
Yeah. So we've
Everything.
got our our tech
use,
genius who sits in the background and does all of our tech during these streams. And though we're having difficulties due to weather right now, hopefully he's taking notes because these are some good things for us to know. Now, this is interesting because I'm plotting something here, and I'm going to throw it out here as a question for you two. Would either of you be interested in guesting on the Misfits?
Yes.
As a player?
Yes.
I was gonna say, depending on the time, and
Yeah.
We can work times. Times make sense. I understand that.
Yeah. I think like if you were to say, hey, within the next month, would you? I would say I don't think we have time right now,
Right.
but like in the near future, 100% yes. Like
Awesome.
Unfortunately, like we've had to tell multiple people right now in our DMs, like, hey, we really want to do these type of things, but like just launching, our heads are like this, and we're like,
no.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
We're trying to do more collaborative work. We want to do it with our friends. We don't just want to do it with random channels. We're definitely going to be looking at collaborative storytelling here more so in the near future, because we've got to, as we wrapped up Plots in Darkenhaven season 1, we'll start prepping for season 2 here in the spring. But we got to have a 4 or 5 months filler I got to figure out here to figure out the next step. So we're looking at a couple project ideas. One might just be bringing a party on to deal with the monster, just so that people can see some of these monsters, and we can use some. We're gonna use some tools out of some of the YouTube channels that I follow. We're gonna use some tools out of Monsters Know What They're Doing, and make the encounter as difficult and as fun as possible. Do
you have that book, Monsters Know What They're Doing?
I have it right here.
Mine is literally on my nightstand.
Yeah,
Yep.
I have about a half a dozen books sitting next to me, because depending on which game I'm running, and then I have another 2 to 3 shelves back behind me.
Yep.
So how do you keep all that together? So when you're running multiple campaigns,
right?
As the DM, like, how do you like compartmentalize those things so that they're not,
It's very, very difficult. I went up to at one point, because I found my breaking point and I didn't realize that I had one until I hit that. I was running, I did 2, and then this was during the middle of the COVID pandemic, and I was like, I can pick up a couple more. I'm not really working that much, so I can prep during the day, because we were still working from home and blah 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 blah. So I got up to 3, 4, and I hit 5 and lost my mind. Like, I was like, I've got to cancel a couple of these.
I bet.
Because
were any of them the same storyline?
No, that was the downfall.
Jeez,
that was the downfall right
yeah.
there. I was running 1 out of Tomb of Annihilation, 2 out of Horde of the Dragon Queen, 1 which is our GUI adventure, and 1 was getting ready to pick up at Rime of the Frost Maiden. Now, and after about a week of that, I went, which story am I playing right now? I don't know.
And you haven't even said anything about your 4 boys. So
that's the thing. So mind you, let me explain that. So nothing I do in D&D happens until after 9 o'clock at night, and that's because all the kids are asleep. I've done my dad mode for the day, it was literal, like, multiple personality kick in that I was losing my mind. Trying to remember which NPCs connected to which story and what was connecting here.
Do you find it, as a DM, do you find it easier or harder to run a campaign, like just a D&D campaign book?
I love this question. I actually enjoy both.
No. The question is, do you find it easier or harder?
I find it easier for me to prepare when I have a campaign
Okay.
already, because
Okay.
I have character names, I have areas,
Yeah.
I have encounters, and then I just need to take what's in the book and prepare it for what my session's going to look like,
Yeah.
and kind of break it apart. If I'm doing
Makes sense.
complete campaign building, then I have to come up with everything as a whole.
Right.
But like I said, I think it depends on your players, because it depends on if the players want to drive a single session,
Mhm.
or if they want to do their own thing.
Yeah.
I had one story
That's a
that,
good point.
because like I'm running the ones I'm currently running right now is I run a custom homemade campaign. I run a customized version of Tomb of Annihilation that has already surpassed the level requirement of Tomb of Annihilation. And I'm running a homebrew-esque version of Horde of the Dragon Queen that is about to finish up here in the next 2 months, I would say.
Yeah.
And then we're going to decide if we want to continue with the storylines that have already been weaved into the story,
Mm-hmm.
or if we want to dive into actually trying to convert Rise of Tiamat to finish up the story. I loved, because when you talked about the kobolds being your, like, attacking the bar and stuff, I love the intro to Horde of the Dragon Queen, because
Attack on Greenest.
Oh my
so good.
God,
it's
good.
amazing that was the very first 5e campaign book, and I still think it's one of the best. Well, I think it's the best intro.
I've never seen an intro much better than that one.
And I mean, it hooks you right away.
You're in the
well done,
in the dirt immediately.
Yeah, I mean, I think players need to start at level 2 for that, just for the hit points. But like,
we started at level 1 and we didn't seem too hard. But that's, I think, all you're dealing with. But all you're dealing with at level 1 is bandits and kobolds. I mean,
yeah.
Now, if they veer off in the wrong direction and they get too many of them,
it can get dicey.
Get a little dicey.
Yeah, I'm going to take a lot of inspiration from that in our next session that we're going to be playing. Nice. So yeah.
No, and I think that's the thing is I never run a campaign by the book, ever. I've never ran one directly by the book. I think it's boring. Truthfully, any book I've read so far, I'm just like, I like it.
Yeah.
But if I move this, and I can twist these around and shift this, and
I just tend to steal a lot of stuff.
I steal a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
From those books, I love going back if I have the time, money, or the resources to pull from second edition books, because it was a lot of lore based. It wasn't a lot of just. I love third party books. Like I get it. I get so excited when I find a third party that I'm like, ooh, this sounds fun.
Yeah.
I have all of the. Actually, I think I need one more. My tech got me this one. The Game Master's Book of Non-Player Characters. I also have the Game Master's Book of Traps, which is a dangerous book. My God.
That's one thing I need to do a better job of, is
traps are hard.
Putting traps in dungeons.
Traps are very difficult, because part of the reason why traps are hard is because you have to ask the question why. Why is this trap here? Like, what would why would this be here?
Yeah. And not only that, but like, to me, it almost feels cheap at times, because as a character, the characters are going to be like on the lookout for things like that if they're in a dungeon. As a player, you may not even be thinking of it, and it almost feels like punishing in a sense of like,
and that's where a lot of descriptions when walking into a room come into place. And that's more so I've told people that before when I've talked to them, is like, if you're going to add traps into the room, when they're walking into the room, you have to describe something. Maybe the trigger, maybe it's the lever, maybe it's something, because these aren't, unless you're playing level 1 and they're jumping into a dungeon that they should not be in, it'd be different. But if you've been through a couple of levels and you've gained some experience and you've learned your character a little bit more, you'd imagine that the character would be, at least if he's in an uneasy area, looking around for these things.
Yeah. I'll do them every once in a while, and it'll be very low damage. And for me, it's like almost a substitute for an easy encounter where you just want to chip away a few hit points here and there, not enough to like cause them to use a
So that's
healing
the reason I
potion or
like
use
the
healing
book.
spells.
The book that the Game Master's Guide to Traps is that it breaks it down into 4 different sections. So it breaks it down from alarm, distract, wound, and kill.
That's cool.
And there's deadly ones that are in there, but you have to decide if that's something, why it's there, right?
Yeah.
And then it also breaks it down into 3 different things. So it's the device, the trigger, and I'm trying to think of like the package. Like that's what the ending would be.
Yeah.
And then there's certain things you can do or see or utilize out of that to describe that. Then if they figure out the description of it, you then can either have them roll or you don't have to have them roll if they're really figuring out the full puzzle. It also has, I think, like 20 or 30 different puzzles in there too. And some of the puzzles I was like, okay, a 5-year-old could figure this one out.
Yeah.
And then there's some puzzles in there and I'm like,
puzzles are so tricky to me to
nobody would
run.
come up with this.
Yeah.
Like
puzzles are, I just, for whatever reason, I've never been good at running puzzles. And it's the same thing as like, why is this puzzle in this? Why is it there?
Right. Why is it here? Like, why is this door not opening? But and that's really the biggest thing with puzzles, right? Puzzles should be something to open either a secret passage, secrets of some sort, somewhere that they're getting that they're not supposed to get to, because the puzzle's there because the person that put the puzzle there knows how to get through it, right?
Exactly.
But yeah, no, my biggest thing with that whole thing is if that was the case and I was going to do that, why don't I just build a key? Like, okay, but it comes down to those things. Shadow Lantern asked another question. Sorry, we got on our tangent. It's okay. This is normally how this works, goes. What would you say is the biggest change from going from a normal session to a podcast session?
Good question. From the player standpoint, I will say there's a lot, because I wasn't always paying attention, let's be honest. Like, he's going through all this stuff and I'm not 100% there all the time.
Yeah.
And so that part of it, making sure that I'm like staying with everything that he's saying. But then with the podcast, like, I'm more worried about, am I voicing things the way that Seven would voice them? Am I, like that aspect of like, now I'm really trying to come at it from this different angle,
right?
Where if you're just playing D&D and you're just hanging out with your people,
a
lot of times it's
not
like,
everybody's paying attention. People I get it. There are times where you like, like some people will just have those like fidgeting issues, right? That's all they do. They fidget, or they're playing with dice, or they're doing something, and
taking pictures of miniatures.
Taking pictures of miniatures and
taking
all
pictures of
kinds
miniatures
of stuff.
and terrain. But then there are points in the game where you have to be more focused, right? You have to let people know, like, we're entering into something that you might need to know about, or you might like. I hate to say foot stomping because it's just something I've heard for years and years in the military, but like these are the things like you have to tell people, hey, you might want to pay attention to what's coming up next, or something like that. You can't do that on a podcast.
No.
Right.
I think for us, like I think the biggest change going from, hey, let's just hang out with friends, to we're creating a podcast, is like the conscious thing always in the front of your mind, not even the back of your mind, is that we are putting a product out here. It's not just,
it's a production.
Yeah, it's not just people playing D&D at a table. And I think that's where a lot of the podcasts that aren't as effective in telling their stories and aren't as easy to follow and aren't as focused, are the ones that are truly just playing D&D at a table. Because anybody can just tape yourselves playing D&D at a table, but it's not good for a podcast. No. And so, a lot of that is like, one, I prep a lot more in the sense of names, random names, and making sure my towns and cities and areas are well thought out and well versed
Right.
before my players ever get to them. Where if I'm just playing a home game, I can be like,
I didn't have time to prep this week,
yeah,
guys.
I don't care. I'm
Right.
making it up, and I'm not going to tell y'all right now. I'm just going to straight up make it up, and they're not going to know, and they don't really care that much because we're just friends playing at a table. And so I
Right.
think it's just a lot tighter.
He's not good at remembering NPC voices either, but
No.
that, no, I'm
Hey,
just kidding.
that's a
No, I'm
difficult thing
I
for
know.
anyone.
Hey, we go back to the old podcast episodes. We're like,
Right.
nope, go back
Yeah.
to episode 14. That's where I
Yeah.
used his voice last.
Yeah.
I think it's keeping that balance, right? Because what's the point in doing the podcast if you're not having fun playing D&D with your friends?
Right.
Like, then it's not, there's no point, right? But at the same time, like Matt's saying, like, we want to make sure that this is a product that we're putting together that people are going to enjoy.
Right.
And so how do you, and I think for me, and I know, I think I can speak for Bobby and Jess. I couldn't speak for Leo. It's a whole other thing, but I think that's part of like why you buy into your character is because like one, that's how you have fun, but two, that's how you put together a good product. We buy into our character. We love seeing how like even ourselves like grow and change and mold to fit everybody else and how it's going. So it is definitely something that like keeping that balance of, hey, we're still having fun hanging out with our friends, but we're recording a podcast.
Yeah.
That's,
I think it's made me a better DM because I'm able to go back and listen to and critique myself. And then I think likewise, it's made them way better players because they sucked before we started recording. I'm just kidding. But no, like they are way more into their characters and way more focused on the game. So it makes the game more fun. So it's it's a more fun D&D experience at the table, which then transfers to hopefully a fun podcast to listen to.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and it's cool because like, so I know Eldritch Buds, they were on, I don't know if they're still on or not, but like, it's always fun to kind of see what Jinxie is going to do. Like, you know, and I think for me, it's kind of fun to see what Seven's going to do because I don't know what Seven, you know what I mean? Like, you know, even though I'm playing him, I, you know, have no idea what's going to happen. And so it kind of keeps that like, again, everything's moving forward, which is what you need in a podcast. You have to have that rolling momentum, but I'm still getting to have that fun playing D&D like I normally would.
Well, yeah, because you still don't want to write out everything because that'd just be boring.
Oh, yeah. No.
You want that spontaneity. You want the reactions of the players to be genuine. You want the situations to be genuine. So players knowing all the situations would be boring because players would react the same way. And I think that goes very closely with how the players have to be run. They have to run genuine as well. They can't be like, oh, well, I would do it this. No, the question is, how would your character do it? You know, that's the, and I think when players can get into that mindset of their character, how does my character do this? You lose that perspective of unorganized. It becomes organized chaos instead of unorganized chaos. Because it's normally when a player wants to do something, but their character wouldn't make any sense to do it. And you're like, why are we doing this again?
Yeah.
Right. Agreed.
I'm still hoping for, you know, I want you to head over to the pit fights because now I'm curious about the pit fights.
So many people are curious about the pit fights.
I want to see Seven in the pit fights. That's what I want to see. I want to see a Warforged destroying the pit fights.
Yeah. Yaros versus Seven.
Ooh.
I mean,
that could be a fun little game.
That could be fun.
Fun little story there. But because I can see the thing that I love about podcasts and streams, and when you step to that next level, you step to the level of not just playing D&D, but you're wanting to produce a production. The idea that everybody has to be coordinating, everybody has to enjoy each other's character, makes for a lot more fun. And you don't get the brooding person anymore, which is one thing that I love. I hate when I'm running a table and doing it professionally now and picking people off the street. I've stopped doing that. I do it specifically through groups. I like people that already know each other. I like to be the DM that comes in when the group has no DM, rather than just doing off the cuff put this guy and this guy and this guy together and hope we can run a game. Because you always get that brooding character. There's always the one who wants to be the loner. He wants to be the grumpy guy. And I'm like,
doesn't want to go where the party wants to go.
Doesn't want to go where the party wants to go.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't have that when you're telling a story that's supposed to be built around a team. Now, and that's where I think when you're playing a podcast or you're running a stream, that goes to, you have to take that to the max level at that point. You can't have that single-handed person just never wanting to go with the party unless that is their literal role in the story. And no matter what they say, even if they're the brooding, don't want to do anything, they still go with the party. Really, that's the only way that would work. And I think that would just be a boring character at that point.
Yeah.
Agreed.
You got to work together. No,
you got to work together.
Yep.
But why would you play D&D if you're not going to work together?
Yeah,
it's the most social game you can play. Like seriously, you have to work together.
So many people that play D&D, I got a feeling those brooding characters or the characters that don't want to go along or the characters that want to fight other characters. Those are the people I feel like are the people that haven't played D&D much before.
Right.
And they just think, oh, well, I can do any
fun.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's like, oh, I can do anything in this game. This is the only game I can do anything I want in. I can't do it in a video game. And like you said, I'm not having fun or I'm boring, I'm bored, and everything's got to be about me. So I'm going off and I'm going to do my own thing.
Okay. So question, what is your favorite way to connect the player characters at the beginning of a campaign?
Another good question.
That's a good question. So in our campaign, I connected them through it's not necessarily a guild, but it's this group of like, I mean, I guess it's essentially a guild, but it's researchers and adventurers and archaeologists and all these different sects of different groups that work together to kind of not bring balance. They're not Jedi, but they kind of stamp out evil before it begins to rise up in the realm that they're working in. And so the researchers are going out there and reading as many books as they can to see if they can find any, and then make connections back to adventurers who are going out and seeing what they're seeing. And then these inquisitors who are going out and, trying to figure out anything that's happening in the realm. And I put them all in there.
Right.
And I said, y'all are all initiates.
So you tied the story together before you even started episode 1.
Yeah. So I said, you are all
I tell people to do this all the time and people don't listen to me.
Yeah.
The easiest way to get your group to begin, the easiest way to connect your players at the beginning of a campaign is to make sure that your players are connected before the campaign starts.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Or I'll tell them in advance, how are your players connected? It's not my job as a DM to do that. It's your job as players to tell me how you're connected. I already have enough to do. Y'all figure it out. Y'all are the players. If you want to play, how are you connected? How do you have the same goals? How do you have the same mission? How do you have the same, how are you going to make the same progress moving forward?
Normally when I'm going, especially when I was with a new group, I give people options. One, when we did the Horde of the Dragon Queen campaign, I said, hey guys, you have the option to make your own ideas, or there's 10 back ways of how you can connect yourselves to this cult issue right off the bat in the book. And they're like, oh, well, we're just all going to pick one of those. I was like, awesome. That's great. And then what I did is I made sure that those points are being hit during the campaign now.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, hey, so-and-so was sent by this person. Well, then 5 or 6 sessions later, you actually ran into that person. He was thankful that you were sent and all that stuff.
I always try as best I can each session. So each of our sessions is what, Philip? 4 hours ish.
About normal.
Yeah.
3 to 4 hours.
I try to hit a point in a character, in at least every character's backstory in each of those sessions as best I can. And that locks players in a whole lot more when it's like, oh, this is about my character. This is my moment to shine. As best I can, I try to do that. For sure.
Noticing the raid just popped up and it's been there for a minute, so our buffering's dying tonight. I apologize, everybody. This is not something we normally have to deal with, but there is, like I said, there's also Hurricane Ian going on in Florida and the aftermaths of that. So I don't know what that could be affecting. Oh, let's see. Yeah, no, I had a question like this last week or the week before, and I'm curious your guys' opinions. Probably Matt's more than Phillips because Phillips is a player and not a. But I actually no, I can take both sides of this. You're a new player coming into a group that's already established, has been playing for weeks. How do you, as the GM, connect that player to make sure and how do you, as a player, find ways to connect to the group?
So a new player coming in.
Yeah, it's really interesting because we actually did this in this campaign. Yeah, and that's why you haven't heard from Wardella yet in the podcast. But yeah, I think, and not to, I was gonna say, as a player and as somebody coming in. So I'll take that side first.
Sure.
As the player and somebody coming in, and so not to how to say this without like any kind of spoilers or anything, but anytime that you're going into a new town or into a new place or meeting a new group of people or doing those types of things, having that ability to, kind of introduce someone in that point where you've gotten to this new town, you've gotten to you're meeting new people already,
right?
And somebody else steps in is a very easy way for somebody who's already a part of everything going, like, again, you were planning on meeting new people anyways. Here just happened to be somebody come in that now is going to be here. Yeah. And I think too, as a player, that part of it where I've got to figure out how to jump in. I think it would rather be in a new scenario for them and not me just all of a sudden I'm here.
Right.
Type thing. And so I think when you take that like new perspective already, they're already in a new perspective, and now here I am as well with that new perspective, makes it a lot easier to jump in and be a part of it than if you just kind of, now here I am, a raging fighter that is ready to
For me as a GM, I think it's two things. One, the players at the table know there's a new player coming in. So like when the character is introduced, you figure out your best way to kind of bring them on board, and you can be suspicious of them and you can be hesitant and all that good stuff. But like at the same time,
you can't just consistently be to that point.
You can't be like, sorry, we're not taking you, and we move on. And you're like, well, I guess you got to make another character now. So like, one, the players know that if you don't have jerk players, that will be fine. But two, I think you tie them. The easiest way I've always done it is tie them in with a common goal. So like if you're going to find a hidden gem in a dungeon underneath the castle, well, so was this player, or so was this new character that got introduced somewhere along that road, and hey, it gets brought up. Well, I mean, if you're going and we're going, let's go together, and then we met, and now we're an adventuring party together. Like if you don't have common goals,